Hello, a warm welcome to Dumi's Daily Grind. My name is Dumi and I am excited to have you here with me today. I have established this channel to share my life journey, drawing inspiration from personal experiences, wisdom gained from others, lessons learned over time, and insights gained, particularly focusing on sobriety, attaining inner peace, serenity, and overall mental well-being, with an emphasis on spiritual growth. If you resonate with this content, please consider subscribing, and your support for this channel will be greatly appreciated. So today I am speaking about self-distancing techniques, and the reason why I'm looking at this subject today is because I realize that some of us do go through some situations that require us to have these skills to be able to self-distance from whatever it is that is causing us pain, anguish, and stress. So I'm going to give you an example to just see whether you do relate to this and whether you are in a position where you may need to use some of these techniques. So I am going to look at a story of a young woman called Lindiwe. Lindiwe was a dedicated nurse known for her compassionate care and unwavering commitment to her patients. Her days were filled with moments of joy and challenges, but Lindiwe faced them with resilience and grace that she could master. However, outside of work, Lindiwe's heart belonged to a guy called Muzi, who has been her husband for several years. Muzi was a charming soul, but he carried a hidden burden, a struggle with addiction to prescription painkillers. Over time, Lindiwe began to notice the changes in Muzi's mood swings, secretive behavior, and unexplained absences. Despite her concern, Lindiwe initially brushed aside her worries, hoping that things would improve on their own. As Muzi's addiction got worse, Lindiwe found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions filled with fear, frustration, and a deep desire to help Muzi to recover. She tried to be supportive, offering encouragement and seeking resources for addiction recovery for Muzi. However, those efforts often felt futile as Muzi's behavior became increasingly erratic. One evening, as Lindiwe sat alone in their apartment, her thoughts weighed heavy on her heart. She stared out at the window, feeling a mix of love for Muzi and a growing sense of helplessness. Lindiwe knew she couldn't continue this way, but she wasn't sure where to turn for guidance. In that moment of introspection, Lindiwe made a decision to seek understanding and support from those who had walked a similar path. Little did she know that this decision will make the beginning of a journey of transformation for her, where she could embark on self-discovery and resilience. So why and what happened with Lindiwe and Muzi that has caused her to seek this help? Well, Muzi's addiction had really interfered with their relationship. Muzi was overspending on their budget. He had a life that was chaotic. He wasn't showing up for work. He was about to get fired. She would sometimes find him at home, lethargic, high, and unable to do anything, leaving Lindiwe to be responsible for their bills, their household, and everything that was required in their household and for them to survive. Muzi's addiction was so advanced that he was unable to find help for himself. He didn't even know that he required help for this. He was sitting at home one day after being suspended from work because he was found to be high at work, and that was his final warning. They shared financial responsibility, and Lindiwe was very worried that she won't be able to keep up with the bills anymore. But she loved Muzi so much that she wanted to get help for him. Lindiwe does not have any problems with addiction. All she wants to do with her life is raise a healthy family with a healthy husband. So what tools can Lindiwe use as she seeks help in this situation? Now, let me talk about self-distancing as a concept and as a technique to allow oneself to view their situation from a perspective where they can be objective. Self-distancing in emotional self-regulation refers to the ability to step back from your own thoughts and feelings, gaining a more objective perspective from them. This practice can be helpful in managing intense emotions and making more balanced decisions. There are some techniques that can be used for self-distancing. The first one that I want to speak about is the third person self-talk. This is a technique that when I am experiencing strong emotions, I try referring to myself in the third person. As an example, I would use a sentence such as, Dumi, why is it that you're feeling this way? Why is Dumi feeling this way? Why is Dumi hurting so much? Why is Dumi angry? This linguistic shift can create psychological distance and help you to view your situation more objectively. Another technique is called narrative writing, where I can express my thoughts and my emotions by writing about them as if I was describing someone else's experiences. This process of narrative creation can promote a more easier ability and a more easier environment for me to be able to reflect and gain some insight as to what is going on for me internally at that moment. Another way of doing this is imagining that I am advising a friend or somebody I love who is facing a similar situation as I am. This is called imaginary advice. What guidance would I give that other person? I need to apply this perspective to my own circumstances so I can help myself with clarity as to where I find myself and why I am here. Then there is the consideration of how I will feel about the situation in the future. So I place myself in a future situation, in a future time, in a future environment, and I consider how I would feel about myself from that perspective. That perspective can be a month from now, a year from now, or 5 years from now. And this can help in the prioritization of long-term goals over the immediate impulses. This technique is called temporal distancing. I have spoken a lot on this channel about mindful meditation practices, and once again, it has to come into this. Because practicing mindfulness techniques to observe my own thoughts and feelings without judgment is very important. Mindfulness cultivates a present moment awareness which can enhance self-regulation. Because when I focus on my breathing and I focus on the moment and I focus on what it is that is happening with me right now, I am able to understand what is important right now, and I can see what is happening for me right now. When a person like Lindiwe comes home and finds Muzi high, unable to do anything, slumping over on the couch, and she finds that that situation triggers her very strong emotions of anger and resentment and wanting to lash out at him, physically distancing or physically removing herself from a triggering environment or a situation temporarily can help her to gain perspective. Physically distancing literally means going outside, taking a walk, going to a safe space, meditating immediately, or engaging in another activity that might calm you. I play a mobile game that I've been playing since 2016, and that game is Pokemon Go. I love the game. I have been playing it since 2016, since it was launched, and it helps me a lot when I need to physically distance from a situation that I find myself in. So you can download games that will just temporarily take your mind away from the situation that you're finding yourself in. Then we look at how we can reframe negative thoughts. I have got patterns as an example where when I find myself in a situation like that, I turn the situation towards myself and I start asking myself very negative questions such as, what did I do today? What didn't I do today? Why is this person high again? Why is this happening to me? Blaming all of those things on myself. Reframing negative thoughts is challenging myself and reframing these negative thoughts or exaggerated thoughts. And I ask myself if there are any alternative explanations or perspective on the situation itself. So an example of this would be Lindy comes home, finds Muzi once again high, and she is blaming herself. She says, Muzi is high because I wasn't at home. Muzi is high because I didn't make him breakfast or coffee, or that argument we had last night is the reason why he's high again. She comes up with all of these reasons that are negative towards herself. All she has to do is reframe those and say, Muzi is high today because he wanted to get high. Muzi is high today. It has got nothing to do with me. He decided, he made his own decision to go get the prescription medication and get high. I was at work, I was doing the responsible thing, I was earning us an income, and I have got nothing to do with the situation right now. And then the other one I want to look at is the use of metaphors, where you think of your emotions as weather patterns that are passing through. This metaphorical thinking can help one detach from intense feelings. And when I say weather patterns, I would say imagine the situation being a very cloudy day. Imagine the situation as you would see a very cloudy day with the sun peeking in between those clouds. What usually happens with a normal day like that is that eventually the clouds start moving away. And if you use that metaphorical example, you can imagine the problems in the situation as clouds that are moving away naturally as everything does pass and everything does change. So you can use this technique to distance yourself from the situation by thinking in that way. Another thing that really helps is when you find somebody in that situation where you feel powerless, seeking support is a really, really effective way. By discussing your emotions with a trusted friend, a family member, a therapist, to get an external perspective on your situation can provide valuable insights. Now, I have to say that as a South African woman who is married, it is sometimes very difficult for us to reach out to friends because there is this belief that we need to keep our marital problems within the household. Do not share it with people. However, I am going to advise you against that. If you are experiencing situations that relate to addiction, alcoholism, any kind of behavioral problem that is causing your household chaos and disorganization and discord, please reach out to somebody. It doesn't have to be a friend, it doesn't have to be a neighbor, it doesn't have to be somebody that you both know. It can be a counseling psychologist, a therapist, even a psychiatrist, anybody, a social worker, just somebody that you can speak to. These techniques I mentioned earlier on, there are 10 of them. They can be adapted and combined based on what you prefer and based on the specific emotional challenge. They are not only useful in addiction situations, but they are very useful for any other challenge that requires self-distancing. Over time, when you practice these techniques of self-discipline, can enhance emotional regulation and contribute to overall well-being. Now, I'm just going to take it a step further and look at it from where I am the problem with addiction and recovery. Now, addiction and recovery often involves intense emotional ups and downs. Self-distancing can help individuals to regulate their emotions by creating psychological space from immediate triggers and cravings. This allows for more thoughtful responses rather than impulsive reactions driven by these intensive emotions. I spoke in a bonus episode about the use of the acronym HALT, which stands for hunger, anger, loneliness, and tired. This will assist in the reduction of emotional reactivity, keeping us away from triggers and cravings. Then we need to enhance self-awareness, and self-distancing encourages introspection and self-reflection. And by stepping back from my own thoughts and my own feelings, I, as an individual in recovery, can gain deeper insights into the underlying causes and the triggers of my addictive behaviors. This heightened self-awareness is very crucial for identifying and addressing patterns of behavior that contribute towards my substance use. Then I need to have a look at my decision-making processes and improve upon those. Now, addiction impairs judgment and decision-making abilities. I think we know that. Now, self-distancing techniques promote clearer thinking and better decision-making by enabling me as an individual to consider the long-term consequences of my actions. This can help prevent a relapse and support healthier choices in recovery. They do say things like, play the movie till the end, remember your last drunk. And by using self-distancing techniques, one can then take a step back and remember what happened the last time they took a drug, they drank alcohol, or engaged in self-harming behavior. Then there are effective coping mechanisms for cravings, and we know that cravings are common. They are a common challenge in addiction recovery, and self-distancing techniques provide individuals with tools to manage cravings more effectively by viewing cravings from a more detached perspectives. Individuals can acknowledge these cravings without feeling overwhelmed or having the compelling desire to act upon these cravings. As addicts and alcoholics in recovery, we suffer a lot from guilt and shame and self-criticism and self-pity, and reducing this, these feelings that are caused through addiction. Self-distancing encourages self-compassion and self-acceptance. By adopting a more objective viewpoint, individuals can challenge negative self-talk and develop a more positive relationship with themselves, which is essential in sustaining that recovery. It does sound a little bit difficult to do. However, can you imagine you are feeling all these feelings of guilt, shame, self-pity, self-criticism because you did something that you were not supposed to do. Now, if you practically distance yourself from the actual action. Take a step back, take a breath, and convert those feelings of guilt and shame into more objective viewpoint and challenging that negative self-thought is doable. Mindfulness practices do help with that, because I am able to take a breath and step back and say, really, is this the actual truth about the situation that I'm facing and about what actually happened yesterday? Is this the actual truth, or am I just exaggerating and focusing on the negatives more? Then we seriously need to work on our resilience. Resilience to triggers is really important, because recovery involves navigating various triggers that can potentially lead to relapse. I know there are some people in the recovery rooms who say there isn't such a thing as a trigger. Well, I am studying psychology. I understand the word trigger. I understand what it means, and it can be used in all sorts of contexts, not only with addiction and alcoholism, but with anger management. Things that we have around us that causes a specific reaction, whether that reaction is a bout of anger, whether that reaction is silent treatment, passive aggression, and all of those things. Triggers do exist, and we need to accept that triggers are a thing. Recovery involves navigating various triggers. I've made examples of what triggers can do to one, and these triggers can potentially lead to relapse. Self-distancing techniques equip me as an individual with adaptation strategies that assist me into coping with triggers without resorting into the use of my substance. This resilience is crucial for maintaining sobriety in the face of challenging situations. Now, in sobriety, I also mean if I struggle with anger and I decide to do something and manage my anger, that management is called sobriety, because I am working on my anger issues. Okay. Then there's mental health side of things, where the seeking of a professional, a trained professional who is able and specializes in the problem that you are dealing with. Some therapists are specialists in addiction psychology, some are specialists in childhood development, some are specialists in so many other fields. If you can find a therapist who is a specialist in your problems, such as anger management, addiction, alcoholism, and all of that, then bonus. Then you need to enhance the engagement in therapy, because self-distancing techniques can complement formal addiction treatment approaches such as cognitive behavioral therapy, known as CBT, or mindfulness-based therapies. Individuals who practice self-distancing may derive greater benefit from therapeutic interventions by applying these techniques to explore and challenge addiction thought patterns. Then, once you enhance your therapy, you are then able to develop healthy coping skills. And over time, self-distancing becomes a valuable coping skill that I, as an individual, can use to navigate stress, cravings, and emotional challenges. By incorporating this technique into my daily life, I can build resilience and develop healthier ways of coping with life's difficulties and life's challenges, which are inevitable. Now, looking from a perspective, from a spiritual growth type of thing, remember, we are having the same problem. The one is viewed from the angle of the one who is watching their partner going through addiction. Then I looked at how to deal with it when you are in addiction yourself. You are the one who is suffering with addiction. And now I'm going to look at it from a spiritual growth perspective, where self-distancing techniques can play a significant role in fostering a deeper self-awareness, emotional healing, and a sense of connection with higher principles or consciousness. Here are some of the ways that we can do that using this technique to enhance our relationship with a power greater than ourselves, in a nutshell. These higher principles, for me, I call it my higher power. You can call it God, you can call it ancestors, whatever is your principle of higher consciousness. Here are ways in which these techniques can contribute to the spiritual growth. I have mentioned mindfulness practices, and I want to mention it again because it's very important. Mindfulness and presence is vital in using the self-distancing techniques, as it often involves practicing mindfulness, which is foundational to many spiritual traditions. By cultivating present moment awareness and observing thoughts and emotions without any attachment, I am able to deepen my connection to the present and to my spiritual essence. When I'm in the present moment, it is easier for me to connect with my soul. It is easier for me to connect with my higher power. It is easier for me to be grateful and appreciate everything that is around me. That is possible with presence. Then there is what we call ego, and it is very important for me to detach from my ego identification, because addiction and alcoholism can reinforce ego-driven behaviors and attachments. Self-distancing encourages me as an individual to detach from ego identification and recognize the true nature that is beyond transient desires and cravings. This shift in my perspective will help me align with spiritual teachings, emphasizing the importance of transcending the ego for spiritual evolution. Then they talk about surrendering and trusting, and self-distancing involves surrendering the need to control or identify with every single thought and every single feeling. This practice fosters trust in a higher power or a universal intelligence, which is fundamental for spiritual growth. By relinquishing the illusion of total control, which we never have, I, as an individual, can open myself up to divine guidance and to grace, because I am no longer in control. I let go of that control that I think I own, and I don't. Then we look at transcendence and dualistic thinking, where addiction often involves rigid patterns of dualistic thinking. Now, dualistic thinking is what I call black and white thinking. You know, when you think about pleasure versus pain, when you think about success versus failure. Self-distancing can help promote a more inclusive and a non-dual perspective, which will allow me as an individual to embrace life's complexities without any judgment. Now, this expanded awareness is conducive towards gaining spiritual growth, as it aligns with teachings emphasizing unity and interconnectedness between myself, my surroundings, my higher power, my soul, my heart, my body, everything around me, and understanding that it is all interconnected. I really need to practice compassion for others and compassion for myself. Spiritual growth is often characterized by the cultivation of compassion, both for oneself and for others. Self-distancing encourages self-compassion by fostering a kind of non-judgmental relationship with my own thoughts and my own emotions. This compassionate approach supports my inner healing and in the integration of spiritual principles into my daily life. Then I need to integrate higher wisdom, where through self-distancing, I can access higher wisdom and intuition or intuitive insights and transcend ordinary ego-based reasoning. This process of integration also aligns with the development of spiritual growth, as it involves the harmonizing of personal growth with the universal principles and the universal truths. We have spiritual wounds, and addiction can be accompanied by deep spiritual wounds, such as feelings of disconnection, guilt, shame, self-criticism. Self-distancing provides a pathway for acknowledging and healing these wounds by embracing a broader spiritual perspective, which is grounded in acceptance, once again, and forgiveness. The reason why we have these wounds in addiction, why they accompany addiction, is because every time we do something in active addiction, we then blame it all on ourselves, our actions, our reactions, and we're so tough on ourselves. And these spiritual wounds need to be healed. And this is how we do it. Then we align with the purpose and meaning of our lives. Spiritual growth often involves discovering one's purpose and aligning with a deeper sense of meaning in life. Self-distancing will help individuals discern between these fleeting desires and enduring values, empowering them to live in alignment with their own spiritual aspirations. What is my purpose in life? A lot of us feel empty. A lot of us feel useless. A lot of us feel like we shouldn't even be here. And hence we escape into substances so we can forget about life. And once there is a realization of what my purpose is and the meaning of my life, I am then able to focus and align myself with these spiritual aspirations. So, from a spiritual perspective, in essence, self-distancing techniques serve as a transformative tool for spiritual growth, and it facilitates self-awareness, surrender, compassion, and alignment with higher wisdom. By integrating these principles into my recovery journey, I can work and embark on a path of inner healing, self-discovery, and reach a spiritual evolution. Now let's look at mental health. Every time I say that, I just want to laugh, because mental health and these topics that I talk about have got so much stigma in South Africa and in the world, really. But I'll look at it. Now, from a mental health perspective, self-distancing techniques can be highly beneficial for individuals struggling with addiction, alcoholism, and any other mental health behavioral related problems, I would say, because some mental health issues are pathological and do require a different kind of treatment, especially through psychiatrists. So I'm talking from a behavioral perspective. These techniques promote emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, and overall psychological well-being. And I'm going to be looking at is, as the first one, emotional regulation. And self-distancing helps me as an individual to manage intense emotions that are associated with my restlessness, irritability, and discontentment, cravings, anxiety, and depression. And by creating psychological distance from these emotions, I am able to respond more effectively and adaptively, reducing the risk of impulsive behaviors. I have to reduce rumination and overthinking, which is something that I do very often because my condition coexists with negative thoughts and rumination. Self-distances encourages me to observe my thoughts from a more objective perspective, disrupting the cycle of repetitive and distressing rumination. This can alleviate symptoms of anxiety and depression, which are common with people who are in addiction, who are struggling with mental health and behavioral problems. These are very common. Then I need to enhance my cognitive control, which I think for me to be finding myself in situations like these, my cognitive function has been impaired to some extent. I don't know how much, but there is an impaired cognitive function. And this impaired cognitive function affects things like decision making and impulse control. Self-distancing techniques strengthen cognitive control by promoting clearer thinking and empowering individuals to make intentional choices rather than succumbing to automatic reactions, which are driven by addiction-related cues. And I have an episode that I spoke about automaticity, and I really enjoyed doing that episode, moving from automaticity to intentionality. This is what this is talking about by using the self-distancing technique. Then I need to improve my coping skills, and this technique equips me with adaptive coping skills to manage stress triggers and setbacks during my recovery. And by adopting a more detached viewpoint, I am then able to approach challenges with resilience and problem-solving strategies, fostering a greater psychological flexibility. Then I need to enhance self-awareness and insight in cases where I'm disconnected between behaviors, emotions, and underlying motivations. I can use self-distancing to promote self-awareness by facilitating introspection and insight into the factors contributing to my behaviors. Now, this heightened self-awareness is essential for effective recovery and long-term mental health. I need to empower myself and have personal agency. And self-distancing will help me to empower myself into taking ownership of my thoughts, my feelings, and my behaviors by recognizing that I am not defined by my addiction, by my mental health problems. I am then able to regain a sense of personal agency and self-efficacy in managing my mental health and my recovery journey. Then obviously I need to reduce the shame and self-criticism. It is not cute. And we know addiction is often accompanied by these feelings of shame, guilt, and self-criticism. And we need to use this technique of self-distancing to encourage self-compassion and self-acceptance, as I said earlier on, and promote a non-judgmental stance towards my own experience. And I need to shift this perspective into the more positive so I can reduce self-blame and foster a more positive self-image. I mentioned earlier on that even from this perspective, by integrating therapeutic approaches like CBT or DBT or mindfulness psychology techniques, I am then able to deepen my insights about myself and what it is that causes me to be so impulsive, and that will help me into becoming a better person. And then there is the relapse prevention tools. And by using self-distancing techniques, I can reduce my vulnerability to relapse, and I can equip myself with more effective emotional regulation tools and be able to recognize the cravings, be able to recognize the triggers, and be able to detach and look at things from a detached standpoint rather than from being part of the problem. So in self-distancing, these techniques promote good mental health by fostering emotional resilience, cognitive flexibility, self-awareness, and empowerment in individuals recovering from addiction and alcoholism. These techniques serve as valuable additions to comprehensive treatment that one might be going through, which are aimed at supporting the holistic well-being and a more sustainable recovery journey. Now, I looked earlier on from the perspective of Lindiwe, who is living in a relationship with Muzi, who is an addict, who is addicted to prescription pills. I just wanted to add on to that point from the perspective of programs such as Al-Anon for parents, wives, siblings, and family members of people who suffer with addiction. There are programs that exist out there, but I just want to touch on some of the techniques that they use to deal with this problem. I'm going to keep it quite short as a conclusion. So as Lindiwe, the first item I want to touch upon here is what is called detachment with love, which is an emphasis that programs such as Al-Anon really promote, because it involves creating an emotional distance from the alcoholic and the addict, and from the alcoholic and the addict's behaviors, while one still maintains compassion and care for themselves. Self-distancing techniques such as this support the principles by helping other members also to manage their own emotional reactions to avoid becoming enmeshed in the chaos that their loved one is doing in their lives. And then we look at techniques such as setting boundaries, and a lot of people speak about setting boundaries, and by stepping back and gaining perspective, individuals can assert their needs, communicate boundaries effectively, and protect their own well-being without feeling guilty and responsible for the other person. Then we need to set our own emotional regulation techniques. This is really important and it's very difficult. And for you to be able to learn how to do this, do seek support. There are groups that teach how to do this, and find yourself a supportive environment where you can explore your emotions and your experiences and see how you can use these self-distancing techniques to enhance your emotional regulation. Then we need to break the cycle of codependence. Codependency is common among individuals that are impacted by addiction. Self-distancing helps these people to recognize codependency behavior and shift toward healthier patterns of relating to one's addict or alcoholic. And by focusing on self-care and personal growth, you as an individual can break free from enabling behaviors and cultivate greater autonomy for yourself. Then, believe it or not, as a person who's affected by addiction and alcoholism, you also need to recover. And you need to focus on your personal recovery. It is promoted, that idea of individual recovery, self-development, regardless of your alcoholic's choices. Self-distancing techniques support this by encouraging others to prioritize their own healing journey. Because as a person who's affected by addiction and alcoholism, your recovery journey has got nothing to do with the addict or the alcoholic. It is all yours. You need to self-reflect, have self-compassion. You need to be able to reclaim your sense of identity and your sense of purpose outside of that addict or that alcoholic. Then, once again, as the alcoholic and the addict are practicing mindfulness and acceptance, you should do the same. And programs such as this do incorporate mindfulness-based practices and principles of acceptance. And one of these techniques of self-distancing aligns with those concepts because it fosters a present moment awareness and non-judgmental acceptance of reality for what it is. Make sure that you do have a support network and strengthen it day by day to keep yourself healthy. Then cultivating gratitude and resilience is very important. And individuals who are affected by addiction and alcoholism are encouraged to be grateful. And gratitude as a transformative practice is really important. And self-distancing techniques promote the gratitude mindset, and it helps us shift the focus away from resentments and blame towards acceptance and appreciation. That shift fosters resilience and empowers individuals to find their own meaning and growth in very difficult situations, such as Lindiwe's situation. Self-distancing techniques are truly valuable tools, establishing healthy boundaries, managing emotions, breaking codependent patterns, and fostering personal recovery. And by incorporating self-distancing principles into their lives, these people can then navigate the challenges of addiction with greater resilience, self-awareness, and compassion towards themselves and their loved ones. So, just to sum it all up, mindfulness and presence are very important, as practicing meditation to observe thoughts and emotions without attachment, fostering a deeper connection for spiritual essence, detaching from ego and identification, surrendering and trusting, emotional regulation, reduced rumination and overthinking, improved coping skills, detachment with love, setting of boundaries, and focusing on personal recovery. So the examples I have used in this episode today illustrate how self-distancing techniques can be applied practically within each perspective to promote growth, healing, and resilience in the context of addiction and recovery and spiritual growth. So thank you very much for joining me on this journey. I hope you found value in our discussion about self-distancing techniques. And it's important to remember that we have to apply what works for the situations that we are in. Use whatever tools that are available. I will be putting down some references for you to look at below, and you can find out more for yourself. So if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes where I will continue to explore topics such as recovery, spiritual growth, and mental well-being. Okay, so if you have made it till the end, I want to thank you so much for joining me today for this very important message. I hope you find value in our discussion about self-distancing techniques. If you really enjoyed it, I would ask you to please subscribe, hit the bell to stay updated on future episodes where I will continue to explore topics such as recovery, spiritual growth, and mental well-being. Your support means the world to me, and I am grateful to have you as part of this community. And let's share the message with others. Let us talk about what is bothering us, and let us be open and honest so we can find the help that we seek. So thank you so much for joining me. In the next episode, I will hopefully be speaking about the dichotomy of control. I am busy doing research on it. I find it so interesting, and with all the other topics I've been speaking about, it will be quite interesting to see how the dichotomy of control plays a role into addiction recovery, spiritual growth, and I will try and incorporate other spiritual philosophies into it. But as we know, the dichotomy of control is a Stoic principle, and hopefully in the next episode I will be looking at that. So thank you once again for joining me. I will see you next time. Goodbye. Have a fantastic week ahead.